Hey folks, welcome back to Retirement Roadmap with MasterPlan Retirement Consultants. My name is Evan. With me as always, retirement planner Mark Fricks. As holistic retirement planners, we know the complexity of a complete retirement plan. Not only are there specific risks that need to be addressed for a successful retirement, there are regulations to follow, many of which can change over time. All the areas of your retirement must work together, as a change in one area, as we know, can carry over and impact other aspects of your retirement. While we know it's crucial to plan for your retirement, which could be 30 plus years without a paycheck, we also know many people enter into retirement blind. Today we're going to discuss retirement planning mistakes and that ignorance is not always bliss.
I don't think it ever is.
That's right. So this episode is titled The Clueless Retiree, which seems a little bit harsh, but
Yeah, that's okay.
it's catchy. You know?
Yes, yeah.
It's all about the clicks.
And it's not you that's listening right now, it's somebody else.
Yeah, and this is, we're going to go through a list of common mistakes and misconceptions that we see frequently. This is not by any means complete, but very common in what we see on a pretty regular basis, Mark.
Yep, absolutely.
So number one, we see a lot of folks coming in who don't have an income plan, but the small amount who we meet that actually do have one, there's one aspect that is nearly 100% of the time not included, and that is not planning for inflation.
Right. It's amazing. Have I seen an income plan? I've certainly seen people come in with an Excel spreadsheet and they just kind of have, you know, this is our incomes and then this is our budget and that's kind of that's it. We do a much more complex spreadsheet that lasts for every year. I mean, every year is an individual year, but you brought up a very important point in the fact that if you just do like a budget with incoming, outgoing, it doesn't take into account inflation. And that's why we do the every year by year, because inflation is real. Mm-hmm. Now, it is linear. In other words, the report says 3.5% a year or something like that. So that does have to be adjusted every year. Mm-hmm. But you get a much better idea if we do take an average and run it all the way down. And it's amazing when you look at that, as you know, is let's say right now they need $80,000 a year. Like in 10 years, that's $125,000, $130,000 a year. So when you see that in writing, you're like, wow, is that really inflation? Well, think back, you know, when my mom and dad built their house back in 1965, I think they spent $5,000 building it. You know,
Wild.
And it's sold for, you know, $300,000 a few years ago. So it's real. It's real. And again, great point. Most people don't think about that, don't include that. Maybe they just think, well, I'll adjust it every year. But you really need to look into the future with that.
Perfect. And very similar in concept to inflation is also not planning for taxes in retirement.
Right. And so part of the holistic plan, as we've talked about before, is having a tax plan. Part of that is, you know, how do we reduce taxes in the future, but also taking into account it's very difficult to be at a zero tax rate. Mm-hmm. We can actually get you there if you want to be there, but it takes a little bit of pain and suffering between now and then. Sure. But yeah, you've got to take into account, and we take into account the fact that we believe taxes are going up in the future. We know they're going up unless Congress acts January 1st of 2026. But beyond that, I don't know how they can keep them much lower for a very long period of time.
Right.
So that's right. A lot of people don't plan for that, and again, that's why our plans are changeable. They're not etched in stone because everything changes over time. Everything changes, and so we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah. This next one doesn't sound like a problem until you actually start looking at the longevity of your money, and that is underestimating how long you will live.
Yeah, I used to do an exercise in class where I would, we'd talk about, I want you to write down on a piece of paper when you think you're going to pass away. And so everybody would write down a number at 78, 82, whatever. And then I'd spend about 5 minutes talking about technology and the acceleration of healthcare and how, used to you'd be in a hospital for 3 weeks if you had a heart attack. Now they got you walking around, a few hours later. And it's just so much they're doing. And now they're getting into cloning and creating, trying to create actual organs and things like this. And so I spent 5 minutes talking about that. And then I said, now write down how long you think it'll live. And that number would always be higher. So you do have to take into account if you're 50s, 60s right now, maybe even 70s, your life expectancy may be 82 or 85 or whatever it may be, But you really need to think about 5 or 10 years to that, adding to that, because I do think with everything happening that we may be shortchanging ourselves.
Yeah, and again, that's just taking a more conservative approach and making sure that your money lasts longer than you anticipate you may need.
It's funny, we'll show a report and typically we'll run it out to age 99 and they're like, I'm not going to live that long. I go, can you swear to that? I'd rather plan for it than you live to be 110 and then we've messed up, right? So.
This next one makes me smile. I'm sure you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I read this. Retiring at age 66 and 8 months.
That's right. So I love wherever I may be, whether it be at church, whether it be at a social gathering or whatever. Retirement will come up especially if they find when they find out what I'm doing or know what I do. And so I'll say, well, when are you planning on retiring? Or maybe it's a new client coming in, right? And so they will say, 66 and 8 months or 66 and 10 months or whatever. And I immediately know that what they've done, as you know, is they've looked at their Social Security statement and saw full retirement age is 66 and 8 months. Therefore, that's when I have to retire, which has absolutely nothing to do with when you should retire. And we've talked about this before, but that is only a calculation marker. So when the Social Security Administration runs through all the calculations of the 35 years you've worked, the average salary, they index it for inflation, all these different numbers, they then say that's what you're going to get at your full retirement age. And so that's all it is. It's a marker. And if you take it earlier, you get less. If you take it later, you get more. Other than that, that's not planning. That's just, I'm not sure what that is. What's a good word for that? That's just being clueless.
Yeah, clueless retiree. I don't know. It makes sense.
I see where it comes up. Full retirement age, people go, that's when I should retire. Maybe they should call it full benefit age, or something like that.
I mean, it's the only thing it is how they work your calculations around it for the years before and after.
That's all it is.
Here's another Social Security one. Taking Social Security before your full retirement age while still earning income.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of people get a little confused about this. First of all, there is a penalty if you make too much money, earn too much money. It's important to say the word earn, if you are not full retirement age. And there's a penalty. You lose $1 of your benefit for every $2 you make over, I think this year's $22,000 and some change. So you have to be careful. If you don't know it and you go another year or two, you're going to get a letter from Social Security saying, we paid you too much. You owe us back. So you got to be careful about that. But there's also confusion about after full retirement age. Some people think there's still a penalty, and there's not. Once you've passed full retirement age, you can make as much money as you want. So it's important to know that.
And another one that doesn't come up too often, but when it does, it can be quite painful, and that's understanding whether or not your Social Security has a WEP on it, whether or not you've achieved your windfall elimination period.
Yeah, so the windfall elimination provision is basically written into the Social Security law that says, and I'm not sure, I don't think it's fair, first of all, but what it says is if you worked for someone, and typically it's like a school system or a government, that they did not pay into Social Security, they paid into your pension, then Social Security will punish you for that. Not only do you have less that went into Social Security, but even on your statement, the WEP, W-E-P, does not show up. It's not reflected. So you're planning on getting $1,800 a month, but if you have a WEP, then it's going to be even less than that. And so, and some people don't know it until they go sign up for Social Security. Yeah. So we do have a way of calculating that. We come pretty close on that so that you know really what you're getting. And that's one of the things that we ask folks is, have you ever worked for somebody that they did not pay into Social Security? Now, they have usually a healthier pension, but they have a pretty weak Social Security payment, so it kind of balances out.
And then finally, for Social Security, just relying too much on public benefits.
Yeah, because we don't know where they're going to go.
Yeah.
They don't keep up with inflation. Pensions don't keep up with inflation. Social Security doesn't because of the formula they use. They are thinking about changing that formula so that it keeps up even less with cost of living, so that would be even worse. So where's that other money coming from? We just talked about inflation. If it's running 3 to 4% and Social Security is only going up by 1.5%, there's going to be a bigger and bigger gap, and that's the responsibility has to fall on the retiree.
Yeah, yeah. Now this next one could mean a lot of different things, but for some examples, leaving money on the table. How many times do we come across someone who had a bunch of old jobs, old 401ks that are just sitting around for years they don't know about? We actually just recently had a client discover a pension from the 80s that she didn't know about. Ex-spouse Social Security, possibilities of drawing on their Social Security.
Yep. So many different places to look. We had one client come in, this has been 6 or 7 years ago, and we found by going through his paperwork from his company he'd been with for 30, 40 years, that there was a pension that he had previously when he first started for the company. And then they changed programs, and he forgot that was there. It's $300,000 in that lump sum pension. And he loves us. He tells everybody. Now, it's his money, but how long, if ever, would he have discovered it? You know, you don't know. And I'm sure he would have eventually, but it was really nice to find that kind of money. But you're right. One of our clients is that we've known for years, as you know, got a letter. They said, time's running out. You worked here in the 80s. You got some money here, you better call us, otherwise we're just going to send it to you and withhold taxes and all this kind of stuff. So it was nice that she was able to find that.
All in all, it was a pretty pleasant surprise, but...
yeah, it's better than getting a bill from 30 years ago for sure. And there's other places too, like you said, even when people pass away, we look to see if there's some hidden death benefits. I think you brought that up as well. You know, I don't know how often this is done now, but used to credit cards would carry a benefit of a death benefit. Kind of included. You know, some credit unions, if you open a certain account, you might have a small death benefit. So you really have to kind of look around and see what else is out there. It's better to do it before you pass away and not let your kids or spouse have to hunt around for that kind of stuff. And something even as simple as a safety deposit box.
Yeah. We
had a client one time that he knew his mom had one. He knew it was within an hour of her work downtown Atlanta. He never found it.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully they would have eventually contacted somebody, but he went on 5 or 6 years looking for it, never found it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Want to take a moment, folks, to point you out to our website, MasterPlanRetire.com. There you can schedule your complimentary consultation to discuss your own retirement, have a series of reports ran for you as well. Entirely complimentary. Again, that's MasterPlanRetire.com, or call us at the office, 770-980-9262. The next one, overall, could mean a lot of different things, but I want to speak specifically to 401k rollovers, and that's not considering liquidity. With the rollover, a lot of times if someone's still working, you can roll the whole thing over, it's still contributing. But then what if you need a withdrawal from there or something? You
know, so if somebody retires, leaves a company, and they're under 59 and a half, if you roll over all that 401k into IRAs, then you cannot touch them until 59 and a half without a penalty. But 401ks you can. I think it's age 55, if I remember correctly. Same thing with the thrift savings plan. So, you know, people that aren't fiduciaries or don't really understand how all these plans work, they're going to grab all the money they can. They want to invest it all for you because that's how they make money. But we leave some money in the company plan so they can get to it without a penalty. And I hope that makes sense. Don't want to get too far in the weeds, but it's just, again, making sure you work with people that do what's right, fiduciaries, and number two, know what they're doing. I mean, I've walked into situations where that whole TSP or 401k was rolled out. They're 56 years old. They need some money. It's going to cost them taxes plus a 10% penalty to get money out of an IRA until they're 59 and a half. So you got to be very careful on that. Another 401k, rolling over a 401k without checking for any loans. Yes. So if you've got a loan on your thrift savings plan, 401k, whatever it may be, those are actually a pretty good idea if you need to borrow money to do that. But if you roll all the money over, they're going to automatically pay that loan back and tax you, whereas I would rather leave some money in there to cover the loan if they're still working there so they can pay it back over the rest of the remaining employment years or the next few years, whatever it may be. So. I'm going to skip ahead since this is another 401k one, but here's a quote. I'll just withdraw from my 401k when I need the money. So, meaning what? Meaning in retirement, retired, are you going to plan, or how are you going to maximize your 401k? Well, when I need the money, I'll just take it out of my 401k. As opposed to having an income plan, or as opposed to... Exactly. Whatever, yeah. Or even how many times, you know, this is complicated because as Mark just alluded, there are a lot of different
reasons this can bite you. One, you don't have an income plan if you're just taking it when you need it. Two, you might not be able to take unlimited withdrawals within a year on a 401k.
Oh, great point. Yes. So most 401ks have a limit of how many times you do a withdrawal. Sometimes it's once a month. Sometimes you have to wait 3 months. Some plans I've seen maybe twice a year. So yeah, you don't really want to do that. So if you're retired, that 401k will be more flexible if you roll it into an IRA or IRAs with multiple jobs, like we talk about, one to produce income, one to do something else. I used to have a client, and no matter how often I talked with them, what they would do is about twice a year take $20,000 or $30,000 out of their IRA and put in the bank and live on that for the next 6 months. And I'm like, okay, it could still be growing in your 401k. We could also maybe spread out taxes over, more than 1 year or whatever. And so it wasn't really an income plan. So I finally convinced them, let's take this out every month, leave, because it's sitting in your bank account, you're not making anything on it, Also a similar story, I call it my roof story. Okay, so you've heard the roof story. I had a guy come in and he wanted to say, Mark, he said, I want an extra $500 a month in income because in the next 2 years, I'm going to need a roof. And I said, we don't want to do that. We take roof money from somewhere else. Let's just take the income you need. And so I was trying to convince him. About 2 months later, he came in. He said, I got me a roof. I said, really? He said, yeah, we had a hailstorm, and my insurance company bought me a roof. And I said, well, aren't you glad you weren't taking out $500 a month to buy a roof that you never had to buy? And so we call that the minimum lifestyle floor. So what is it that you need coming in per month to meet your obligations on a monthly basis? And then for that vacation, for that roof, for that new car, we'll go in the future when you really need it and take it out and take care of that.
And if you are just flying by the seat of your pants and I'll just take it out of the 401k or IRA when I need it, and you don't really have an income plan too, okay, great. Is that 401k or IRA invested in the market? What happens when the market is down and you want to take this need,
Great point. That market down 15%, now you take out 20,000, you've just sold at a loss and locked in that loss forever. Yep.
Here's another one that we hear more frequently than than I would think, but taking your 401k lump sum to pay off a mortgage.
Oh man, that's a bad one. And I'm asked that more than once, as you know. And so imagine this. Okay, so somebody comes to us and they say, I've got $100,000 left on my house loan. I just want to be debt free on my house. I'm like, okay, well, what's your interest rate? 3%. 4%, whatever it may be. I said, so you're going to take $100,000 out of an IRA or 401k, pay 25% taxes on that. So you're really taking out $130,000 to pay off a mortgage that's almost free at 3 to 4%. Okay, don't do that. I mean, if we want to take out a little bit extra per month to add to the payment, that may be fine. But the other thing about a mortgage is that's the one loan I don't mind because number one, you're borrowing against something that's increasing in value. And number two, it's a low interest rate. And again, if you're taking a little bit of money out every month, the rest of your money's in the IRA growing and you don't have that big tax hit. It's spread out over the year and over the years. And so typically not a great idea. Also, if you have your house paid off, if you spend a lot of your other money to pay it off, where's your liquidity? A lot of your equity is in your home, but no longer in your IRA or whatever else you took it out of. So it then becomes a liquidity problem. So let's have a plan for paying it off. I know it's important, it feels good, but let's don't jump the gun and make a bad decision.
This next topic we've definitely touched on in estate planning episodes before, but that is gifting your home or property to heirs while you are still living, including bank and investment accounts.
Right. Like that. A couple of big problems with that. So let's say I have a home. Let's say I'm getting older. I'm in my 80s. I'm not, by the way, but I'm in my 80s, and I'm feeling vulnerable. I really want to make sure my daughter. Let's say I have a daughter. I want to make sure she inherits the house if she needs to do something while I'm sick or if I go in a nursing home. So I go up and I say, here, daughter, I'm going to put the title in your name. Okay, so a couple of problems with that. Number one, you really just gave a gift to your daughter. Okay, that's called, you owe a gift tax. All right. Number two, it now belongs to her. So if she gets in a divorce, if she gets in a lawsuit, my house that I gave her is on the line. And then number three, you've created a tax problem because you no longer are getting, and this is a whole subject, but you're not getting a step up in basis. If somebody inherits it, there's virtually no tax if they turn around and sell the house. If you give it to them, they have to pay the tax on the profit of what it was when you bought it versus when they sold it. So big mistake. We call that the lazy man's way of estate planning or trying to control stuff. Yeah, don't do it. But it happens a lot. Sometimes just a checking account. But again, if it's $25,000 in a checking account, it technically belongs to whoever you put their name on, or if you made them a joint owner. So you got to be very careful about that.
Well, and you get, again, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit trail here, but you also get into issues on how much you actually own if there's an emergency. Say you did put one of your children on a checking account, they get married, maybe it doesn't go so well, there's a divorce, then all of a sudden half your checking account is up and
technically up for grabs.
Yeah,
so absolutely.
That happens with houses as well. So.
Yep.
And that kind of brings us to more estate planning discussions. Haven't updated POAs or healthcare directives in a little while.
Yeah, especially in Georgia, they changed the laws in 2017 and 2018. So if you have an older financial durable power of attorney, older healthcare directive, the language is wrong. I'm not saying they would not work, but you may end up in court. You don't want to go to court if you've got somebody in the hospital bed or whatever. And so make sure they stay updated with our clients. We do updated beneficiary audits. We take a look every 2 or 3 years of their legal documents. Not only have laws changed, but also even things like now we want certain language about electronics now. As far as, or do you have the right to get into somebody's password list if they're incapacitated or when they pass away? And so there's new language all the time being added to wills and powers of attorney.
We see that happens. Unfortunately, it tends to get updated when there's a scramble. We need to update these or even look for them. Sometimes it's easy to just lose track of some of these documents.
I've been on the back of a couple of clients, and I mean in a positive way, by the way, to reminding them that we need to update some documents. And it's something people put off because you don't want to think about it, but it's important. Don't, as we've done a show recently, don't leave a mess for your family if something happens.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing you do.
And this just piggybacks off that previous topic about the POAs and healthcare directives. Just have not updated estate planning documents, period, to coincide with life changes.
Yep. Life changes as well. Maybe a divorce, maybe a new grandchild, maybe whatever. Or again, maybe a change in tax laws. Maybe you didn't even think about that. But working with somebody that's looking at all of your stuff holistically, we're gonna keep an eye on that, and we're gonna make sure that they're updated, whether it's a change in your life or change in something else.
I was speaking the other day with a potential client who's also happens to be a good friend. And he was saying that when we discussed his will and his estate planning documents, that he said it laughing, but knew it was an issue, that his adult children, who now have children of their own, in his estate planning documents, it still says who they will go to as their guardian if something were to happen to him and his wife. So the timetable is a little stretched.
Yeah, you probably don't want your 38-year-old son to be taken care of by your 88-year-old old friend or whatever it may be. So not that they would have to.
The roles might actually reverse at that point.
It may be the other way. You're right.
Well, we are about halfway through this list, and we still have very little time left. So it looks like there's going to be a part 2 coming up.
I think we should do a part 2. So stay tuned for that.
Well, this was fun. The Clueless Retiree. No offense to anyone, but in fact, we share these because we do see them more than once, and some of them more than others. So take advantage of some of this knowledge. Look into your own situation. Go to masterplanretire.com, schedule your complimentary consultation. But remember, it's all part of a full, complete, holistic retirement plan.
Yep, hope you visit the website, mark it. It's a great resource. But until we see you again, remember, plan well and prosper. Take care.